Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of At the Boundary, the podcast from the Global and National Security Institute at the University of South Florida. I'm Jim Cardoso, Senior Director for GNSI and your host for At the Boundary. Joining us on today's episode is Dr. LindaNhon, a resident research fellow here at GNSI. She's working on an upcoming article focused on deep sea mining of critical minerals. She's stopping by the podcast today to provide a glimpse into her findings and recommendations. First, though, a couple GNSI notes. Tomorrow marks the opening day of GNSI Tampa Summit 6, titled Cracks in the Lamp, Freeing the Nuclear Genie. We've gathered a fantastic group of speakers and experts who will be addressing a wide range of global nuclear questions and challenges, including nuclear deterrence and proliferation, rogue nuclear states, the Golden Dome, and many others. Considering the globally catastrophic implications of these topics, it may be the most impactful conference we've hosted to date. On day one, the headline speakers will be two retired four-star generals, John Hyten, former commander of U.S. Strategic Command, and Frank McKenzie, former commander of U.S. Central Command. We'll also hear from five-time ambassador and former Assistant Secretary of State, Christopher Hill. On Wednesday, former Special Assistant to the President, Frank Miller, will take the podium. We're also excited for the chance that day to spotlight the research of USF students, the next generation of national security leaders in this space. There's still time to register, and there's no cost to attend. We'll drop a link in the show notes. Additionally, as the war in Iran continues, we wanted to mention how the GNSI team is providing expert analysis for various media platforms around the world. Our executive director, General McKenzie, has appeared on multiple media outlets providing his expertise, most recently on the U.S. Naval Institute's Proceedings podcast, for a close examination of the current campaign. As the former commander of CENTCOM, his analysis of the conflict in Iran and across that region is illuminating and unique. I recommend you seek out that episode on YouTube. It's only been available a few days, and it's already one of their most viewed. There'll be a link to that in the show notes as well. Also, GNSI resident research fellow Dr. Arman Mahmoodian is providing expert analysis of the war in Iran and the Middle East writ large for a number of global media outlets, including Fox News, TRT World, Bloomberg, and Defense 24. His expertise has been in high demand, and I don't think he's slept since March 1st. If you'd like to keep up with Arman, we encourage you to follow him on LinkedIn and X. Finally, we're excited to announce that our conference report from the first Florida Security Forum is now published on our website. Florida's Maritime Edge, built through leadership, ready for what's next, analyzes the strategic priorities and provides recommendations for cyber preparedness, workforce education, and autonomous readiness of Florida's deepwater ports. Dr. Tad Schnaufer, GNSI Strategy and Research Manager, coordinated a large team of contributors for this report. We'll drop a link in the show notes. All right, let's bring to the studio our featured guest today. Dr. LindaNhon is a resident research fellow here at GNSI with strategic areas of focus on technology and policy. She previously served as a program officer at the U.S. National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. Currently, she's working on a new research article focused on deep sea mining of critical minerals and resources. LindaNhon, welcome to At the Boundary. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jim. It's great to be here.
To start a conversation, in your article, you open by discussing the resurgence in seabed mining and the excavation of polymetallic modules, or PMNs. Since that's not a term that most people, including myself, are familiar with, can you describe what PMNs are and why they're important?
Yes, definitely. So if we break the word polymetallic into two, you can think of poly as multiple, metallic being metals, and nodules, I guess, like nodules, rocks.
Balls, yeah, okay, yes. Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so polymetallic nodules are rocks found at the bottom of the seafloor, and these rocks contain multiple metals, so hence the word polymetallic. And the three main metals found in these clusters of rocks are cobalt, copper, and manganese. So that's the term of art that those in oceanography or seabed mining, they like to use to describe these rocks.
So what's so big about cobalt, copper, and manganese and those particular metals? And I think your paper's mostly about cobalt, and I know you've been doing a lot of research on cobalt, but maybe you can just, okay, so people are hearing that, oh, cobalt, yeah, big deal. Why do I care about cobalt? Why do I care about copper? Well, copper we've heard of. Why do I care about manganese? Why are they important?
Yes. So cobalt, I focused a lot on cobalt because that's the high value commodity in these rocks. Mm-hmm. And from a company's perspective, they want to be able to generate revenue and profits. And so the rock should have something of high value that they can sell. And the reason why cobalt is of high value is because it's found in electric vehicles, specifically lithium-ion batteries. The reason why it's important is because cobalt, by default, it acts as a coordinator. So it coordinates to oxygen, 6 different oxygens usually in the battery architecture. And this type of coordination allows the lithium, as it's moving between the cathode and the anode, so the charge and discharge function, the cobalt allows the lithium to migrate back and forth seamlessly without jamming up, forming like these dendrites. And once dendrites form, I'm sure if you've heard about all these batteries catching on fire.
Yes.
That's part of the reason, is because the dendrite formation. But the presence of the cobalt allows the lithium ion to move freely, so not jamming up. That's one reason why cobalt's important in applications. But another application for which cobalt is important is in defense systems. In particular, when it's coordinated, like I mentioned, in the lithium-ion batteries, the cobalt is coordinated to oxygen. In the weapon systems, it's coordinated to another metal, also another critical mineral, is samarium. And so when cobalt and samarium are coordinated together in this alloy is just another fancy word for materials of mixed metals.
I remember that from my high school chemistry class. I remember what alloys are. Okay, so I'm 1 for 1 in that.
All right.
I'm sorry, keep going.
So I can stop there in the sense that like cobalt and samarium are used in weapon systems. They're used in precision guided missiles, for example. They're used in coatings and
well, the precision-guided munitions especially, I mean, that's obviously key right now. I mean, because right now the United States is expending a lot of what we call PGMs, a lot of PGMs in Iran. And in fact, we just saw the news that the Department of Defense is asking for another $200 billion to replace precision-guided munitions. So again, that's going to be a whole lot more cobalt that's required by the companies that build these missiles for the United States government. So it's, I mean, for people who don't think that cobalt's important, it's right now front and center, extremely important for creating these missile systems, these weapon capabilities.
Yes, that's exactly right. And that's part of the reason why seabed mining has come into the conversation, because these rocks at the bottom of the seafloor that has been there for millions and millions of years contain cobalt, which, as we just mentioned, is a high value item for these applications. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, I was in the Air Force. My job in the Air Force, I didn't launch any missiles. I was a pilot, but I was different kind of aircraft. But I can understand that it's a precision guided munitions capability has been a U.S. advantage for decades in terms of how we wage war, especially from the air. So yeah, it's an important thing. And also from the commercial sector, as you say, EVs are just probably a bad word to use. When we talk about the batteries, are just growing exponentially in the amount of EVs that are being used. And so this cobalt it's key to be able to build these EVs.
So there's the aspect of cobalt contributing to the safety features of lithium-ion batteries. But I wanted to circle back to what you were mentioning earlier, Jim, which is you used to fly planes. Mm-hmm. And yes, in addition to being used in precision-guided missiles, samarium cobalt is also used as a coating on aircrafts for stealth missions.
Yes.
And one of the really interesting aspects about the samarium cobalt feature on these coatings is when radar systems, so let's say enemy radars, are trying to detect what's in the air, if there's any aircrafts, usually the way it's detected is the radar sends out a signal, it hits an flying object, that object then reflects back the signal, and the enemy can determine where in the air that aircraft or object is. What makes samarium cobalt coating unique or special is that in war environments where radar signals are being sent out, it absorbs the signal. So once it absorbs the signal, there's no signal that transmits back to the radar, so the enemy has no idea what is out there. But you probably already know that's a very expensive feature to have.
Very expensive. It's you talk about stealth and precision guided munitions are in the Air Force. We term them as offsets. These are key points in the Air Force's growth where just a significant leap ahead in a capability made a significant difference in how we wage war from the air. And stealth and precision guided munitions are two of the main offsets that the Air Force will talk about. And what you're saying is that this cobalt samarium linkage, for lack of a better term, for the non-chemist in the room, is key to that. And I remember when now stealth, you've got the F-35, F-22, the B-2, the new B-21 bomber that's coming out, all are leveraging stealth to a high degree. But I remember when the F-117 came out, and that was the first stealth aircraft. And there was a lot of it was at the angles. It had some weird angles it built in, but a lot of it was in the stealth coating. And it was classified and nobody, only a few people know how to do it. But I just remember reading how it was so challenging to work with in that, because of a regular aircraft, if you have some kind of ding on it, you just paint it. You can paint it. Not so with these stealth coatings. It's incredibly challenging to work with and incredibly time consuming and obviously expensive as well, more than just a coat of paint.
Yeah. So you can imagine when you paint a wall, for example, you just keep adding the same layers of paint over, you do one coat, wait, let it dry, put another coat, but it's the same paint. But I think in the engineering of the coating for the samarium cobalt, each layer is engineered differently to absorb a different frequency of the radar. So not only is each layer of paint or coating for the samarium cobalt is different, it also has to be engineered to absorb energy in a different way and dissipate the energy in a different way.
Yeah.
So when there's a crack in the system, that means there's multiple different entities that have been severed just in the paint.
I mean, that's okay. We're not going to walk down that rabbit hole too far, but there's a lot there. Point being that from both a national defense perspective and also a commercial perspective, what we're talking about is incredibly critical. It's incredibly important. Now, and you talk about how the appetite, again, for PMNs is ravenous. That's the draft I saw, quote unquote, ravenous. And the ocean floor does hold nearly untold natural resources to fill that demand. But there are significant obstacles as well, which you talk about in the article. So let's walk through these obstacles a little bit. And the first one is competition from terrestrial mines. Now, can these land-based mines keep up with the demand? And also, aren't there some geopolitical instabilities associated with these land-based mines?
Yes. So before we go into the ocean, there are existing terrestrial mines, as you just mentioned. The Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, produces 70 to 80% of the cobalt in the world. The U.S., the United States government has brokered a peace deal between DRC and Rwanda. How effective is it on the ground right now? I don't know. I'm not there, but... Probably
knowing the history of that part of the world, we can maybe assume it's not that effective, that it's still a little bit turbulent over there.
Yes, I can agree with that. So in that deal, there was another agreement that was signed, which is called the strategic partnership agreement. And in that agreement, the United States has asked DRC to give preferential treatment to U.S. companies in securing the cobalt coming out of the mines. So the U.S. government has brokered, in addition to the peace deal, a business deal to secure cobalt.
Okay.
So that, from a seabed mining perspective, it's a little hard to enter a market like that when there's already the U.S. government, which is a customer, has already secured a supplier.
Yeah, yeah.
So that makes it a little tricky. And in addition, if it's not the DRC, I do want to backpedal to what the actual demand is for national security applications. So like the weapon systems and that samarium cobalt coatings that we were just talking about. In terms of the total global demand, and you imagine a pie chart, only 9% of that demand comes from super alloys. Everything else comes that demand comes from battery applications. So if we're talking about strictly national security purposes, like defense applications or aerospace applications, that's only 9%. And the United States government can secure that, if not from DRC, the cobalt from allied countries like Australia and Canada, which have their own mines. And just to update, I wrote this paper about a month and a half ago. Just now in March, the United States Geological Survey is partnering with Mexico to do aerial surveys in New Mexico and areas bordering New Mexico and Mexico to look for reservoirs that also includes cobalt, in addition to other critical minerals.
Okay. Interesting. So, I mean, it's interesting what I take away from that. I mean, obviously all the information, but also that this is all changing rapidly. Like you said, you drafted this a month and a half ago, which is not that long ago, and things have already changed since then. And because of just, again, like you said, this ravenous need for this cobalt. Another obstacle you talk about is environmental challenges. If you're doing seabed mining, you're going to impact the seabed environment. Do you have an idea of what those impacts would be and how we'd mitigate them?
Yes. So one of the nice things about being at USF is we have the College of Marine Science, and they have a robust curriculum and department for studying ocean science. And they helped host, in partnership with the International Marine Mineral Society, they invited me to attend and learn. And from that meeting, there is a lot of different scientific research going on in terms of studying the marine environment. In particular, there is this thing called plume dynamics. So when the polymetallic nodules are excavated from the sea floor, there's obviously a lot of sediments. So as the robot rolls across the seafloor and collects the rocks, the rocks has to get sucked up to the surface. And that's about a 5,000 meter journey up. And when that happens, there's a lot of the sediment forms or moves up, and it forms a plume, like a plume cloud. And so there is a lot of concern about to what extent will this plume cloud at scale start to either block oxygen from allowing life to thrive. So the question about disturbance in the marine ecosystem is still open-ended. However, there are a lot of studies out there that are looking at what depth the sediments can be released back into the ocean.
Okay.
There are certain depths that if it's being released, it may not disturb the environment or the organisms. But there's still a lot to be studied.
There's still a lot to learn. It says,
However, I will say proponents of seabed mining have argued that in comparison to terrestrial mines, the ecological damage or habitat loss is less than that caused by terrestrial mines. There are literature out there, but I think it's still a lot to be determined.
From hearing your voice and reading your body language, we are in the same room here. You seem a little unsure about whether that's legit, that claim that the land-based mining is even more ecologically damaging.
Yes, but I will also put a caveat. I am a chemist by training. Maybe having an oceanographer who have studied the marine environment in particular, maybe it's going to be a person who can explain it better than I can.
Well, we'll have an opportunities in the future in the fall. Quick shout out. We'll be doing our next Florida Security Forum is going to be on critical minerals with a focus on offshore critical minerals. And we're going to gather those types of people around. One of them being Mark Luther. And I'll give a shout out to Mark Luther over in the College of Marine Science. He's a great partner to us as well here at GNSI. So you'll hear more about that conference as it comes up in the fall. The last obstacle you talk about is probably the most complex, to me at least, and it's the regulatory environment. The uncertainty in international waters as a business risk, because this is a business to pull these PMNs off the ocean floor, and you outline competing guidance in. So I've got the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, the Deep Seabed Hard Minerals Act. There's also oversight of the International Seabed Authority. And then you factor in President Trump's recent executive order on offshore critical minerals and resources. And these are terms and organizations, again, most people are just not familiar with, including myself. Can you walk us through a little bit how these regulatory challenges create an uncertain business environment and therefore impede seabed mining?
Yes, definitely. So in 1994, the United Nations Convention Law of the Seas, UNCLOS, was signed and ratified by a lot of the countries involved in the United Nations. While the United States was instrumental in drafting the original language, because of the political situation at home, the U.S. never officially ratified it. The United States remains a permanent observer in the International Seabed Authority. So within UNCLOS, there is a governing body called the International Seabed Authority. And so they are the ones that are really putting out the rules and regulations in relation to seabed mining. And so the United States sits in these meetings, but just as a permanent observer without any voting rights. Mm-hmm. But they can give their opinions.
Okay.
On the home front, the U.S. has created their own domestic rule or law called what you mentioned, the Deep Hard Seabed Minerals Act.
Yes, Deep Seabed Hard Minerals Act, yeah.
And that one says that the U.S. can operate in international waters. NOAA, the National
Oceanographic and Atmospheric Agency.
Yes,
yep.
They are the ones. So NOAA is, in a way, the U.S. domestic equivalent to ISA.
Look, I mean, it's the regulatory environment. It's so dense and complex. I mean, that's why we're stepping through it little by little. And believe me, people listening to this are hearing this for the first time as well. And I encourage you to go online and maybe Wikipedia this stuff so you can get build your situational awareness of it as well. But keep going as far as why where we're at now.
Yes. So within the domestic rules, in addition to NOAA, there's the Bureau of Ocean and Energy Management, BOEM. They are responsible for giving out licenses or permits within national jurisdiction. But in international waters, NOAA is responsible for giving out those permits. Now there's this weird overlap when a U.S. company goes out into, for example, the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, CCZ, that is an area that is rich in polymetallic nodules. It's between Hawaii and Mexico. That's technically international waters.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a U.S. company and there is the ISA, who have carved out specific areas within the CCZ to give out to the member states, what do you do? Do you apply to NOAA? Or you can't apply to ISA because the U.S. never ratified it.
Yeah.
So that's where we are right now.
Exactly. Yeah. So from a business perspective, even though there's probably a lot of commercial revenues to be gained, a lot of business to be gained for a long time, probably, I can see that being a bit of an impediment, like them just being a bit reluctant because it is so complex, and they may wade into this, thinking, all right, we think we got the pathway scoped out. Then you just never know where somebody's going to go, stop, you can't do that. And it could be from the U.S., it could be from the international community. And yeah, I can see how from business perspective, even though it could be very lucrative for them, there's a bit of reluctance.
Yes, but I also want to mention that right now, so there are specific terms that each group uses. So ISA uses the term exploration licensees, which is when they give out that permit or that license to a company, that company can go out and do, they call it environmental baseline studies, which is to start characterizing the marine environment underneath, the chemistry in the water, the plume dynamics. They do a thorough assessment, but there is no excavation of the rocks. That's just the exploration.
Mm-hmm.
In order to extract the rock, a company must obtain an exploitation license, which to this day, no country has received an exploitation license.
Okay.
And so that means nowhere in the world, in any of the oceans, is someone technically allowed to extract the polymetallic nodules. Now, what the Trump administration has done recently in their executive order for unleashing offshore critical mineral resources, they want to streamline the regulatory process where NOAA used to have stepwise process for obtaining, they called it I think it's also called an exploration license, which is similar, forming a baseline environmental baseline study.
So to confuse things, let's name things the same thing as well, so to make it even more confusing. Excellent.
Yes, and then the second part, which is the equivalent to the ISA's exploitation license, is NOAA's commercial recovery permit. Which, if a company has it, that means they're allowed to go out and extract the rocks and sell. They have yet to give out any new commercial recovery permits. They gave 2 permits out in the 1980s to Lockheed Martin, and Lockheed Martin still holds those permits. But the company that's closest to receiving those permits may be the TMC, the metals company. Right now, I don't think they have. I think they received the exploration license, but at the rate that things are changing, it may happen soon. Okay.
Wow. I mean, that's just a lot to absorb right there. I mean, it's just real. I mean, it really is. And I think that, look, like I said, I mean, if you're a business, you're trying to get into this, and it is obviously lucrative. It looks like a couple companies have, Lockheed and literally TMC is the metal company. I mean, that was an inventive name right there, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I guess that sooner or later we're gonna wade through this and figure it out, because the need is not going to go down any for these critical minerals, and so that resource is out there. So we're gonna find a way to wade through. But that's why I said, I mean, the other things we talked about, the environmental impacts, the the competition from land-based mines. Those are obstacles, but a little easier to understand. The regulatory one, it's all very man-made. The other two are not. That's very man-made. Just regulatory bureaucracy.
How many rules can we make? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, and you have the international community in the U.S. going, I don't think we want to subscribe to that. And the thing is, a lot of people listening to this would say, oh, well, that's, the current administration. They're kind of pulling away from the international community. He said, no, this is 1994. This has been going on since. So it was a different administration. In fact, if I remember my history properly, that would be the Clinton administration was in charge at that time. So yeah, it's a very different administration, but still there's a sense from the United States. We don't want to adhere too much to the international norms for reasons that, look, each country acts in its own self-interest. That's just the way it is. So, yeah.
Yes. Yes. In fact, historically, the pushback hasn't actually come from the executive branch. The pushback for not ratifying UNCLOS has come from Congress. And that's because the United States believes strongly in freedom of navigation.
Yes, that's true. And they're big on that. And, there's a lot of, yes, I agree with that. But you are truly talking about international waters. And I don't know, like I said, but we're not going to solve that today. But you do come up with some recommendations, right? And GNSI nor you would be doing your job if we didn't come up with some recommendations to offer to policymakers. And you provide 3 of them in your article. And so what are they? How do they address the challenges? Mm-hmm. And how feasible do you think they really are to execute?
Yes. So when I started to think about what are some practical things that the United States government can do in moving the field forward and still addressing the challenges, I first thought about, well, if one of the concerns has to do with the environment and because there's a lot of pushback from environmentalists to continue with seabed mining, then one practical way is creating an open database. Science, it becomes trustworthy if it's transparent and there's a lot of researchers doing the work and double checking. So having replicability in the data. And right now what's happening is all these databases that are under NOAA, for example, they're siloed. They are for different topics. But if we can aggregate the data or centralize data that's related to seabed mining, and that's a lot of different areas. That's from marine chemistry to the biology in the waters to the plume dynamics. If you can consolidate into one open database, I think I called it the International Seabed Open Database, ISOD, then that will be able to build some trust and transparency where the U.S. is leading the scientific community in understanding the international waters as it relates to regions that contain the polymetallic nodules. And so that's number one, the U.S. taking a leadership role in the scientific community or international scientific community. A lot of the seabed mining industry are led by companies, the private sector, and they have testified in front of Congress asking for basically subsidies and funding. And some even go as far as asking for security against environmentalists in the waters.
Yeah, that's a bit much, but I can understand them asking for some type of guarantees because they're going into a very risky environment, as we talked about with the regulatory environment. But that may be a bit much, but okay, I got it.
Yes, and so I think that type of risk should be taken on by the private sector. And in terms of how government funding should be spent for ocean science, I think it should go back to these federal agencies and fund the programs that fund academics and universities and researchers who will do an independent job and analysis on understanding the marine environment in these areas, rather than what's going on now, companies sponsoring consultant firms to do the environmental baseline studies.
Yeah, which may or may not have results that are favorable to the company's interests.
Yes.
Potentially. So yeah, having an interested but objective third party. And that'll provide the information that Congress needs and even that these companies need as well to go about their business in a safe and responsible, but also, revenue generating manner.
Yes. And then the third recommendation, I called it the Poseidon Accords.
Yeah, that was a cool name. Did you just make that one up?
Well, it's not that hard.
Oh, that's still a cool name, though. Yeah, Poseidon Accords. I like that. So, yeah, explain what that is.
Yes. So it's basically a framework, a legal framework that brings in allies, U.S. allies, to the table to talk about the norms and regulations for how to cooperate in international waters when it comes to seabed mining. It's basically like UNCLOS. Mm-hmm. But because you didn't ratify UNCLOS, should still have some type of framework that allows the United States to work with our allies in these waters that's beyond our national jurisdiction. Like, for example, in the Indian Ocean, there are polymetallic nodules there. In other parts of the Pacific Ocean. So partnering up with our allies in a clear way that will help mitigate some risks if you are a company. But I do mention that if at any point that the United States decides to sign on to UNCLOS, then Poseidon Accord should also be sunset to remove confusion.
Yes, I'd agree with that. But so it's a way to create some level of international cooperation in the area. So this is just a way of doing that. Okay. Realistic? Think those goals are realistic? And I mean, I know I'm asking you to kind of go on a limb here a little bit, but I mean, are those incredibly hard to do, or are they in the realm of the possible?
I think they're all in the realm of the possible. The Poseidon Accord, it's if NOAA works with the State Department has all the levers to do that type of work. That's their bread and butter. I think it's just a matter of getting these recommendations into the right hands or the right people who have the ability to do that. Like Congress obviously have the ability to allocate the budget. That's a little bit more trickier.
Yeah.
But creating an open database, consolidating the different databases and NOAA, that's something that NOAA can definitely do in-house in partnership with other agencies like BOEM to do that. Now, would a program manager want to do that? Maybe not, but if a director of a division within NOAA saw it as a priority or there was a top-down emphasis, then it would be done.
Well, and that may come someday as these, like we've said, the demand signal for these types of minerals is not going away. It's only going to go up.
Yes.
And so there will come a time that I guess you call it the cost benefit, the priority level of these sorts of activities gets higher. You're talking about something from a national level or a congressional level or an agency level. They've got so many things they're trying to do. They've got so many priorities that they're hit up with. So it's just got to bubble up from the noise. But I think it will eventually. And again, that's one of the things we'll talk about and maybe provide some great recommendations, and then we'll explore them a little bit more as we do some more research over the next few months and do the conference in October as well. Any final thoughts before we end the podcast for today?
I do want to note that when it comes to seabed mining, it is all about the raw ore extraction. So I have not even touched on the aspect of refineries.
That's true. Yeah, good point.
So whether or not we're mining from the ocean floor or we're mining from the terrestrial mines, the elephant in the room is where are the refineries located?
Yeah, and not a lot of them are in the U.S., is my understanding. Most of them are in China, right? So that's another topic, and maybe that is a topic that we'll look at in future research, maybe future discussion. Maybe at the Florida Security Forum we're going to have in October. But for now, I will say that, as we do this podcast, we've looked at maybe doing this a visual podcast. If we ever do a visual podcast, you're going to be the first guest because, I know you may not like that idea, but you are the most active So just for everybody listening out there, everything she's saying, there's hand signals, there's hand gestures. So, I learn a lot just by watching the nonverbals that she's making right here. So
you mean the young verbals?
I saw what you did there. Very nicely done. Yes. So, but at the end of the day, LindaNhon, thank you so much for your time today.
All right. Thank you so much for having me, Jim.
Special thanks to our guest today, Dr. LindaNhon, Resident Research Fellow here at GNSI. Look for our upcoming research article on deep sea mining of critical minerals and resources in the near future. Next week on the podcast, our special guest will be Manoli Priniatakis. He's a GNSI non-resident senior fellow and the CEO of Intelligence and National Security Directions, LLC, which provides geopolitical risk consulting in the intelligence and national security space. He'll be a featured speaker and moderator at Tampa Summit 6 this week, leading both a panel and a breakout session focused on the Golden Dome. And that's what we'll be talking to him about next week on ATB. If you don't want to miss that episode or any other episode, be sure to like and subscribe to At the Boundary on your favorite podcast platform. You can also find GNSI on YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Be sure to follow, like, and subscribe. Tell your friends and colleagues as well. And you should definitely check out our monthly newsletter. All this is on our website, usf.edu/GNSI. We really appreciate you sharing some time with us today. That's going to wrap up this episode of At the Boundary. Each new episode will feature global and national security issues we found to be insightful, intriguing, maybe controversial, but overall, just worth talking about. I'm Jim Cardoso, and we'll see you at the Boundary.